Hello and welcome to Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott, the pastor of Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California. And we're talking to somebody down in Southern California. His name is Max Herr. Welcome, Max.
Hi, Kent. How are you?
Yes, you're right now in what town?
I'm in Pomona, about 30 miles east of Los Angeles.
Pomona. All right, very good. We have a lot of background together in Southern California, don't we, Max?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, thanks for being on the program, and let's start by talking about your parents. Your parents. Where are they from?
Well, my mom is a first-generation American Jew. Her parents emigrated from Poland to Pennsylvania, and she grew up in the Pittsburgh area before the family moved to Los Angeles in the early around 1915 or so. My mom was born in 1924, and she grew up mostly in Southern California.
Okay, and your dad?
My dad, his father emigrated to New York from Lithuania and eventually settled in St. Louis, Missouri, where my dad was born. He was born in 1923, and eventually the family moved to Los Angeles in the early 1930s, and he grew up in Los Angeles, went to Roosevelt High School, and that's where he met my mom.
So were they religious Jewish? Did they go to synagogue or anything?
The family was, at least my family and those of my cousins that were here in the Los Angeles area, we were what I would refer to as secular Jews. We weren't particularly religious. We did observe the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which meant I never got perfect attendance in elementary school because we got pulled out usually the second week of school for a couple of days, and then a week later we got pulled out for another day.
Did you ever attend Hebrew school?
No, never did. I didn't even have a bar mitzvah when I turned 13, and that kind of saddened me because several of my cousins had bar mitzvahs. And
well, I spent my high school years in Los Angeles too, in a community that was half Jewish, and I went to Hebrew school, and I was part of AZA, American Zionist Association. All my first girlfriends were all Jewish. So okay, so you're there in Los Angeles, but so you didn't have much association with a Jewish life, Judaism?
Not in the strictest sense. I mean, we knew that we were Jews, and we tended to associate mostly with Jewish friends. But in elementary and junior high and high school, I had a lot of non-Jewish friends, and we hung around, and many of them were church-going, and none of them ever witnessed to me as a Christian might have.
Okay. So in high school, did you do any sports?
I did. I played tennis. We had a tennis team for a couple of years, and I was on the varsity basketball team. And my senior year, our team won the San Gabriel Valley League Championship. It was the first league championship in any sport that had come to the school.
San Gabriel High School?
No, La Mirada High School, but it was part of the San Gabriel Valley League in CIF.
Oh, okay, all right. I know the area. It's a great place to live, really.
Yeah.
At that particular time too. So, so you yourself, Max, in high school, if somebody said, "Well, are you associated with the religion?" What would you have said?
In my freshman year, I would have said I'm Jewish. I was participating in a youth program at the temple in La Mirada, but in 1967, the Six-Day War happened, and it suddenly became a little less fashionable to be known as a Jew. And so I, over the next couple of years, just kind of backslid from being a Jew, I guess you would say.
Okay. Did you know anything about Christianity at that time?
I didn't really know much of anything about Christianity. The Jesus movement was beginning to happen. I think my senior year in high school, 68, 69. And I had a number of friends that were Christian, but again, nobody ever invited me to come to church with them. Nobody ever witnessed to me. Nobody ever said, "Do you know Jesus?" or "Do you know if you're going to heaven?" or any of the things that we would commonly ask somebody today.
Okay. So you really weren't acquainted with anything of a Christian nature. So what were you planning to do as a career, Max? What had your eyes on?
Well, beginning probably in the fourth grade, the teacher that I had in the fourth grade got us hooked on aviation, and we actually built our own little hot air balloons, groups in class, and we had a balloon ascension one day, and I got the bug to start thinking about engineering. I've always been excellent in math, and thought that I would become an aeronautical engineer. And when I was in the sixth grade, I actually got a catalog from the Air Force Academy to see what it took to get into the Air Force Academy and get a degree there. And so I oriented myself toward that. And in my senior year in high school, I actually got a congressional appointment to a nomination to the Air Force Academy. But during the physical testing, I came up with the early stages of nearsightedness. And at that time, with the Vietnam War, the Air Force was interested in educating pilots. And with eyesight that required glasses, you couldn't fly an airplane. And so I got put into a waiver category, never made it to the Air Force Academy. At that time, I was also involved in a program with the LA County Sheriff's Department. I was in the first class of law enforcement explorers in 1969 and 70, and started looking at law enforcement. And after I graduated from high school, I went to Rio Hondo College and obtained a degree, an AA degree in administration of justice, looking toward a career in law enforcement.
Wow, okay.
Same thing happened. My eyesight had descended just beyond the 20/40 range at that time that you had to have to be a police officer or a deputy sheriff, and so I had to start looking in another direction.
Interestingly, when I went to the military, Air Force, my hearing was so bad. After the initial exam, they said, "Well, you're not going to be a pilot, Philpott." I ended up 4 years as a medic in the early 60s. So that was interesting. But so Rio Hondo College admin. So did you think about anything of spiritual nature when you were in college?
Not so much while I was in college, but heading toward graduation in 1973, I got engaged to a young lady that I met through the Sheriff's Explorer program, and she was a Christian, at least that's what she claimed to be, and I started attending church with her, And we decided to get married, and we had a counseling session with the youth pastor. And the closest he ever came to witnessing to me was near the end of that 1 hour of premarital counseling, when he said something like, "So, do you have a relationship with Jesus?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm getting there." And that was about it.
That was about it.
And it was almost 10 years later that I actually became a Christian.
Yeah. What kind of a church was it? Gospel preaching church or?
It was the Downey Free Methodist Church, and compared to the Baptist churches that became my life after becoming a Christian, I kind of look back at it and don't remember anything remarkable about it. I mean, it was a large church. The Sunday worship service that we went to was the second of 3 services, and there were about 350 or 400 people in each of the services. So that was a pretty large church for that time.
Sure, indeed it was. So you weren't really impacted by the Jesus People movement during that period?
No, I did for a brief period of time have a girlfriend who was very much into Christianity, but again, she never shared anything with me, never inquired of me, and the opportunity to become a Christian just never materialized in those years.
Yeah, okay. So let's begin on kind of the steps, Max, that took you to a place where you started to understand what Christianity was. Where would you think that started?
I can definitely pinpoint that to a Tuesday morning in February of 1981. I was working in the insurance industry. I had been in the industry for about 4 or 5 months, and just one morning I got up. We were ready to go out into the field, and just something kept me in the hotel room that morning, and I picked up the Gideon Bible that was in the night table.
A Gideon Bible.
A Gideon Bible.
The Gideons would be glad to hear this. We're big the Gideon fans.
And I looked in the Bible, and I figured out where the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, ended, and I opened to a place in there earlier than that, and actually ended up turning to the 40th chapter of Isaiah, of all things. And I read the 40th chapter, and the last verse there, 40:31, actually has become my life verse, because it spoke to me in that period of my life when I had to get out there and work, and I read those words: "They who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, walk and not faint." And I was doing a lot of walking in those days, going door to door, cold calling in insurance. And that night I started reading the Bible at Genesis 1:1, and over the course of the next 12, 13 months, I had read almost entirely through the Hebrew Scriptures. And on Easter Sunday in 1982, I attended church with my wife and my son, and actually heard the gospel message in a way that it resonated with me for the first time. And
this was in Max, somehow you went away.
This hasn't happened before, so I'm going to try and see if he's going to get back.
And
Oh, here he's back.
Ask him to start again at a different.
Max, go back about a minute.
So I started attending temple services in the Chatsworth area where I was living, and on Friday nights would listen to the rabbi preach, and the God that he was talking about, if he ever talked about God, was pretty much an inanimate object. And the reading that I was doing in the Hebrew Scriptures, God was very much a live being to me and was seeking a relationship with me. And I felt that very strongly. And so there was a big disconnect in my life between the God that I was sensing as I read Scripture and the God that the Jews that I was attending temple with had an understanding of. And so on Easter Sunday morning, when I heard the gospel message truly for the first time, I suddenly realized that Jesus was the living God who had been speaking to me for the last year. And as I share my testimony sometimes when I get the opportunity to preach, I say it this way, that I realized that I was a murderer and I had to go forward and confess my sin and ask for forgiveness. And that's what I did that morning.
Now, when you say you're a murderer, how did that apply to you?
Well, I realized that it was my sin that nailed Jesus to the cross, and I needed to atone for that sin. And it was, there's no other way for me to say it than it was a no-brainer. It was an absolute natural progression from the reading and the relationship that God was developing with me over the past year.
Right. Well, that definitely fits into my category of genuine conversion, Max.
And when you look at people who come to Christianity, I'm kind of an anomaly as well, because I was almost 30 years old, and past age 14 or 15, if a person hasn't given their life to Christ at that point in time, it becomes extremely more difficult as they get older to make that step of faith.
Yeah, I was 21 when I became a Christian, and there's a lot of truth to that. It's amazing when somebody in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s will come to faith in Christ, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it does,
absolutely.
It does definitely happen. So, so now where are you at this point, location-wise?
I'm in Pomona. I've always lived in Southern California.
But when you were converted?
I was living in Chatsworth at that time.
At Chatsworth, okay.
And I attended church at First Baptist Church in Norwalk, which was about 45 miles away from there.
And where?
In Norwalk, city of Norwalk.
Okay.
Southeast Los Angeles.
Okay. Yeah, LA is a big place, isn't it?
Very
All right. So I got to ask you, Max, were you baptized?
I was, although it took about 6 months, 5 months really, for me to begin reading through New Testament scripture and growing in my faith and realizing that I needed to be baptized, not that there was any salvation in that, but it was the last step in expressing my commitment to faith. And so I made that second walk down the aisle one Sunday morning in September, and the following week I was baptized.
Wow, okay. Very good. Did you get a baptismal certificate?
I may have, but if I did, I lost it a long time ago.
Okay, now when you're going through this, what's the reaction of the people around you? Now you're married at this point.
I had been married. I was married in 1973, and in 1980, shortly after my dad died in August, my wife and I separated, and so we were not living together at the time I was saved, but then we got back together shortly thereafter, and she didn't, for whatever reason, she didn't attend church the Sunday that I was baptized, strangely enough.
Okay. Now, I think that relationship ended in a divorce.
It did. In the spring of '84, that divorce was finalized.
Okay. And you're going to a church at that point?
Yeah, actually, I was still attending First Baptist Church of Norwalk.
Okay. How did they react to that, the people there?
The folks at the church were very caring, very loving. They were aware of the situation, and they knew that it was my wife who had the problem with me, not something that I had caused. And so they were very supportive. Divorce was still not a thing that anybody liked to talk about in the church in those years, but nobody ostracized me as a result.
In fact,
did? What's that?
Did they? What did you say? No,
I said nobody ostracized.
Okay,
me.
Nobody did. Okay, good.
And actually, I think the thing that really helped me the most was the minister of education there at the time was also a divorced person, and he helped me through that more than I think anybody else did.
Okay. Wow. Did you had a child by that marriage?
Yes, I did. My son was a bicentennial baby born in November of 1976.
Okay. Did you able to maintain relationship with him?
I did, mostly. There was a point in time shortly after I graduated from Cal Baptist when my ex-wife moved up into the high desert in Hesperia, and she did a pretty good job of preventing me from seeing my son on a regular basis. It made things difficult. It strained the relationship between me and my son as he was growing up and into his high school years. But he knew that I was always supportive of him, and on those weekends when I did have the opportunity to be with him, I would find out that he needed clothing or shoes or something, and he always went home with whatever it was that he needed. And my son and I actually have a really good relationship now.
Okay. Well, did you get remarried?
I did. Actually, I got remarried in 1985, and that marriage also ended in divorce, but about 5 years later, and that was a truly sad situation. My wife and I, at the time, we continue to be very good friends, but there was an incident when her children, who were about the same age as my son, spent the summer with their father in Texas, and the guy took my son to a brothel in Mexico to try and get him educated, and proceeded to molest my stepdaughter in his own bed that summer. So both of those kids had a very difficult time, and it put a lot of strain on our marriage, and we just came to a point where it was going to be better for my wife and her kids to go separate ways and let her try and nurture those kids. But we remained close for a number of years.
Well, Max, we have something in very common then. I've been through divorce twice myself. And it's amazing that people like us are still going to church, because most of the time we get rejected.
Well, I know about the rejection. When I finished my degree in religion at Cal Baptist in 1985, I thought the ministry that God had called me to, and actually that happened just weeks after I was baptized, that I clearly felt God calling me to ministry. I I thought that because of my background in photography and journalism, that I would be ideally suited for a missionary or mission position on the foreign or home mission fields as a photojournalist or video journalist. And that's why I went to Cal State Fullerton, did a degree in communications with an emphasis in television, thinking that that would complete my photo and journalism background. But the doors to vocational work within the Southern Baptist community just would not open to me because I was divorced. And so I ended up working in the broadcast television industry for a number of years.
Okay. Wow. It's sometimes the Christian community can be very supportive, but dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, I continued through all those years to maintain church attendance and membership in a Baptist church somewhere. And in 1998, I had just recently moved from Moreno Valley to the Walnut area of Southern California, and was at homecoming for Cal Baptist, and happened to bump into a good friend, Kent Dacus, who's now the vice president of the university there. But I knew his dad was a pastor, and I asked him where his dad was, if his dad was pastoring anywhere, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's senior pastor at First Baptist Church of Walnut Valley." And I said, "You're kidding." I said, "I just moved to Walnut 2 weeks ago, and I'm looking for a church." And he told me where the church was, and that next day I showed up at church, and Pastor Dacus recognized me, his wife recognized me. We had a little bit of a reunion, and the next week I joined the church and was there for 22 years.
Wow. And somehow you got involved with the California Southern Baptist for the organization.
I'm sorry, say it again.
The administration part of it
Sure.
has settled, and you were in Fresno, right?
Well, no, I've always been in Southern California.
So you never moved to Fresno?
No, I never did. In 2002, I married my third wife, a wonderful, wonderful Christian woman, whose father was a lifelong minister, pastor, Southern Baptist pastor. And my wife's family are Ukrainians who emigrated to Argentina just before World War II. And then my wife's mom and dad emigrated with their two children from Argentina to California in 1963, just a few weeks after John Kennedy's assassination. And we met through church at First Baptist Walnut, and we dated for almost 2 years before we decided to get married. And it's just been a remarkable. We just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary back in February, and
wow.
It's been a remarkable journey. She was serving on the executive board of the California Southern Baptist Convention at the time, and I became familiar with many of the leaders. And in 2012, I was elected to serve on the executive board of the California Southern Baptist Convention, and I was just beginning my second term in the beginning of 2016 when they created a brand new position in the convention in human resources and church compliance. And I looked at the job description, and the 6 or 7 things in that list, I had done all of those things in one way or another over my very eclectic work career. And I told the folks, I think I'm interested in this position. And they were shocked. They didn't think that I would leave my insurance career to come to work for the convention. And we talked about it and decided that it would be a very good fit. And I spent the next 6 years working for the California Southern Baptist Convention, representing the interests of almost 2,400 churches statewide.
And this is how I came across you, Max, because as pastor of the Miller Avenue Baptist Church, we're affiliated with both Southern and American Baptists, and you helped us in the bylaws. With the bylaws, by the way, we're still going through this. It's not a simple thing. All right, Max, well, thank you for this. We're gonna come right back in just a minute. So here we've been talking with Max Herr, and we're going to be going to a second program, part 2, on our conversation with Max Herr on why we are Christians. So long.